Hello, everybody. Welcome to the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Tilford, joined by Josh Brown.
Good morning, boys.
And Ben Roy Turner.
Happy birthday, Kane and Lynch 2.
Oh.
It came out today in 2010.
You know, he said he had something to announce. He had something to show on the podcast. And of course, it's Kane and fecking Lynch 2. Have you been going back to it again?
It's not a day for celebration, mate. It's not a day for celebration. Put that away. Lock it up, lock it away. It's too old now. Put it in its own case.
Josh gets a Series X. Ben Roy continues to have Kane and Lynch 2. It's victories all around. But yeah, for this week's podcast, because we did a question and answer thing last week, we just put out a tweet just asking people what they'd like us to talk about, and had a massive response to that. So I thought we'd just carry it over to this week. Plus, there's not many new games out for at least another few days. The likes of 12 Minutes, Ghost of Tsushima's Director's Cut expansion will be dropping in the next few days. So we're just going to dive into the rest of the questions. First one from JB Patrol. So JB, yourself, watch out, pal. Wow. What is your favorite video game movie? I actually quite like the Silent Hill movie and Prince of Persia. Now, I've not seen Prince of Persia, but I would totally back Silent Hill as well.
Ben Roy has to take this away. I saw him being quite humble and being reserved there, letting me speak first when all I want to hear is him talk up Resident Evil once more.
Look, I love the first Resident Evil movie. It scared me to death as a child. I'm not going to say I might have shedded a tear in fear or so, because I was like, 10, whatever it was when it came out. I loved the first one. The second one was hilarious. I watched a dodgy DVD of it, just hearing characters saying GTA mother effer when they run over naked booby.
I've seen that meme so
zombies.
Much.
Yeah, and it's just like, I was like, what did this start that? And then of course I've got to go with the Josh Brown Patrol. I love the first Silent Hill movie as well. I think that's class.
Yeah, I think the first Silent Hill is actually genuinely very well shot. I think they nailed the look of the game. They actually replicated some of the camera angles from the game, which I thought was really cool. Is there any, just for quickly mentioning all the Resident Evils, is there any Resident Evil movie that you would genuinely hold up as a genuinely good film? You don't need to be a fan. Yeah, I would say the first one. You don't need to be a fan of the games. You can just go to the first one.
I think the entire series almost works better if you're not a fan of the game, because of how much it butchers the source material. And that's its own choice. There's a certain level of pleasure to be had in that. But yeah, I think the first one is genuinely really quite good. I think it's a lot of fun. I like its internal logic. I like its aesthetics. The characters are good. Colin Salmon is there. And the music's actually, and the music's mint as well. I think the first one is great. That would be my shout for the answer to this question. However, I do want to throw something in that I think might just cause a rift between you two. Because I recently, actually, that's an entirely different thing. Super Mario Brothers, the movie, yes, that's going to be in there. But more importantly, the most recent Mortal Kombat, which I thought was a
for the love
film.
of,
I really enjoyed that. And
I liked it.
I would hold that up there as perhaps one of the better ones, maybe.
I wouldn't. I would absolutely bury it. I hated it. I thought it was terrible. But carry on.
I've got a better riff than that, Josh, not to one-up you. The best piece of Final Fantasy media ever created, Spirits of In, is also one that technologically pushed the industry forward. Had a great voice cast. It looks a bit dated now. It looks better than all those Final Fantasy PS1 games. But I would recommend people watching that.
Yeah, I mean, I never went back to Spirits Within because it's not a Final Fantasy thing. It's
but
just
Mortal Kombat's great as well.
Mortal Kombat's got a very good Sub-Zero. I was going to throw in, because we tend to think of video game movies as the banter era, the 2000s era. But to be honest, I really love Detective Pikachu. I think that would be my actual shout. I really like the idea of cyberpunk style Pokemon. I love the idea of just seeing an actual world of Pokemon, a realistically shot version of Pokemon. I think that's actually quite good. Monster Hunter was absolutely abysmal. I was just thinking of other modern stuff.
It's pretty good. Tomb Raider was all right.
Tomb Raider's solid,
yeah. The most recent reboot, but also the very first one is kind of a good dumb movie.
Oh, the Jolie one,
is it Alicia Vikander one? Perhaps?
Alicia Vikander's the new one.
Hitman is also, the first Hitman movie is a weird point in time where I was Die Hard 4.0 was out, and then that was out around the same time. It was Timothy Oliphant, I think that's him, and just it kind of works. And they play Hitman in the movie, and they've got Teabag from Prison Break in here doing a bad Russian accent. Let's go.
The bit where they're on the train and they all just produce swords and have a sword fight, and I was like, what?
Out of nowhere.
Why? Yeah, why? It's just from the back. But yeah, I feel like video game movies have got a lot better. Obviously, Sonic is an obvious one. I personally wasn't a massive fan of Sonic. Thought it was fine. But yeah, I think actual shouts would be Resident Evil, would be Silent Hill, would be Detective Pikachu. Next question from Voy, who says, do you think the next Saints Row will be balls to the wall like 3 and 4, or a bit more grounded in reality like 1 and 2? I don't think 2 was very grounded in reality. Here's hoping it for the latter and maybe a 1-2 remaster before the next installment. Where are you guys out on Saints Row?
It's funny, right? Because, 2 was a big jump from 1, wasn't it? In terms of
2 had the poop cannon where you cover houses in poop.
Totally, but I do understand what they're saying because in context and in reference to the things that came after, like it does seem tame. Like you look at 1 and 2 as almost the gritty versions of Saints Row until it got properly off the wall, and now we're so far beyond where 2 even was when that was being celebrated for being wacky and weird and all of that jazz. I don't think we ever go back. I don't think we ever go back to this point. We might rein it in from where we were previously, going to literal hell for a little bit, for instance. I don't know if we'll go down that extent again with a proper sequel, but I definitely think we're going to get something in line with Saints Row 3 or Saints Row 4. I feel like it's not losing the wackiness anytime soon because that's its USP at this point.
Well, for me, Saints Row's trajectory was just doing whatever GTA wasn't, because you had Saints Row 1, when it dropped, you had really cool next gen graphics at the time. That was kind of what drew you in, and the physics model was really cool. But then the more GTA then went serious, Saints Row then went wacky, and for me, Saints Row, the appeal of that was being what San Andreas used to be to GTA. And if you missed that wackier side of GTA, you could just go and enjoy that with Saints Row. Saints 3 is one of my favorite games, and then I kind of thought that 4 was really enjoyable, but it was the alien race was coming to Earth, and it just was completely insane. And I never even really played Get Out of Hell. I did the very beginning of it. But for me, I don't know what the hell the identity of Saints Row is anymore. And I think that even franchises like Just Cause have proven that you can't just keep doing wacky banter AF. It's not going to keep going. We've done that. We've explored it. So I kind of wonder what the hell Saints Row even is at this point.
I only ever played 2, and I lived through the 3rd vicariously through my Lord and Savior Ryan Davis back in the day. Just hears him talk about that game. But I never really played 3 or 4, so I can't really tell. I have seen the power moment when you jump out of the plane, and I've sampled much of Keith David's work from those games, so I feel like I've got a lot out of it. Jokingly aside, but no, I've not really played them, so I don't know.
Because what would get you in, as someone who's more of a casual fan?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think. Has this series been embraced? Is it part of the Embracer blob of properties that they own?
I don't think anyway. But I guess overall, as a franchise, GTA. I mean, that was the thing. GTA took the biggest amount of time off across the 2010s, and that was also when Saints Row started getting less and less releases, or not really knowing exactly what it was. But in terms of going forward, I don't know. I think they might keep with the latter stuff, because I think it'll be a weird swerve if they go back to just being a basic crime sandbox game again.
I think they've got to, if they come back in a way and it continues, they've got to ground it a bit, because you can't go more. You've got to bring it back down, haven't you, to then go big again, sort of thing. So that would be my guess if I was someone. Have it wacky and funny, but don't have it super serial, and then build up to another apocalyptic event. Yeah,
I think they could go either way.
I've never actually finished a Saints Row game. I'm not a huge fan of the franchise. I think I've talked to you guys about it before. Saints Row 3, I couldn't get into.
I couldn't believe that when you said you didn't like 3, and I was I loved that game.
I got to it too late. I got to it when it was free on Xbox Games with Gold at one point, so it was quite after the fact. Get Out of Hell, I didn't jive with. I'm not even sure if I played Saints Row 4 at all. Saints Row 2, I played around a friend's house. Saints Row 1, I started and then didn't finish because I just wanted to play GTA. It's been this franchise that I've put time into, but just never gotten much out of it. It's very, very odd. So I'm kind of with Ben Roy, where I don't even know what they could do to deliver a game that appeals to me, because I just feel like the very fabric of it isn't my thing in a way.
I do wonder that because GTA is so just GTA Online or GTA 5 if you want that again, either that makes publishers run for the hills because they can't compete with the numbers that GTA is doing, or you could do a nice open world crime sandbox game, the likes of Sleeping Dogs, the likes of Saints Row. There used to be these other the true crime games, for example, and things like that. There were viable alternatives to GTA for a while. It just feels like all that stuff went away.
Was that because it was cheaper to make the games back then, and it didn't require like 6 billion people to code a tree and stuff in layman terms?
Totally. I mean, you know, all those games you mentioned aren't around anymore. As much as I like True Crime, as much as I like Sleeping Dogs, you know, they tried to, you know, be these alternatives to GTA. And there was only really Saints Row that kind of like managed to have some longevity. And that was because it eventually ended up embracing aliens and wacky big dildos and stuff.
I think it's more like it would be on the publishers to like go up against GTA. Obviously, there would be GTA comparisons. And I get why from a financial, you know, bean counting sense, they would just be like, well, we're clearly not going to be able to beat this, so let's not even try. But like the open world crime sandbox genre used to be a thing. It didn't used to just be GTA. And I feel like there is a way to go back to that. But yeah, in terms of a series identity, I feel like Saints Row is just lost at sea at this point. Like no one responded to the get out of hell stuff. And there ain't no way you go from there. Next question is from Zach, who says, do you find it difficult to juggle multiple games at once? For me, if I'm playing a game and jump ship to a new one, I generally don't find myself going back to finish. Now, yes. But I mean, it depends. I don't necessarily find it difficult to juggle multiple games at once, but it's just like I'll just play as much as possible, and then whatever latches on, I'll keep going. But I don't know what you guys are like. Josh, I know you're painfully devoted to finishing Code Veronica before you touch your Series X.
I totally am. You know, we've talked about this on our Monday show, Scott, before, about how we differ. So I'm excited to see what Bedroy says. But yeah, for me, I can't play multiple games at once. I can play 2 at max, maybe 3
7,
if
8.
the third one is a multiplayer game, because otherwise I just get anxious that I'm not experiencing one of the games to its fullest potential. I feel like I'm not paying enough attention to it. And if I don't finish it, I'm the exact same as whoever asked this question, and that I'll just forget, Zach, sorry, and that I'll just like forget about it and I won't pick it up again. So I need to make sure I finish it, and that's why I've not really touched the Xbox Series X yet, because I've got the Forgotten City and I've got Code Veronica X almost completed. Like I'm in the last stretch of both, and there is no way I will pick those back up if I start Ori on the Xbox or start Forza Horizon 4 on the Xbox. I'm going to finish these and then move my entire spirit and body to the next thing. That's how I like to do it. But Ben Roy, what's your game?
I kind of like, I have a few on the go, and I treat my games like, say, fresh veg or fresh fruit. You know, they're gonna go off in my brain, and I'm not gonna want to go back to them if I leave them sitting there. They're gonna stagnate.
Very fair.
So I personally, as I like to sound to like, I will go through a game and I will keep going back to it, and I will, if I choose to platinum it, I will do. At the moment, I'm playing Chaos 3, but I'm also on a point where I've kind of slowed down with some games. I'm not really playing anything. I'm playing like a mission or 2 of Chaos 3 a week at this point, and I'm playing like, say, PUBG with my friends, and then doing my Gears days and jumping into the Ascent with friends, and we finally got rid of Outriders, and we've done that now. But like I really just have like the friend game, and then and then maybe 2 on the go, but I try to just do 1 at a time, if that sort of thing. Like I'm very sort of like, I wouldn't say methodical, because I'm like, oh yes, I'm methodical with my games, but I just like to really get one done and move on, sort of thing. And in this area of when we've had nothing for a while, I almost like block out in my head, like, okay, like after Chaos Fury, coincidentally with all these remakes that be announced, I'm going to GTA 3 next after this. So maybe if that gets announced before I finish that, then who knows, sort of thing. But
I like your criteria there, Ben Roy, and I think I would completely back it up. You've got the you game that you play solo, you've got the friend game, and sometimes you might have the partner game that you play with your partner, and then they're the 3 games that I can have in my orbit at any one given time. Otherwise, you've got to change them out and replace it with something else.
Too much.
I like that.
Yeah.
Mine's just whatever the hard drive can hold. I'll put as many on there as possible. I'll jump between as many as possible. But I sort of have like I've mentioned this before on whatever different podcasts we've done, that I kind of have like a subconscious test. It's quite similar to what Ben Roy said about like if I leave it too long, then something will just rot and I'll just not be bothered anymore. But I'll just see what takes hold. Like something like I was replaying like Ghost of Tsushima and prep for the director's cut, and it's like that reminded me of like that's a game that I want to absolutely rinse. I want to see every single part of, and that'll be something that like latches on and has that subconscious kind of hold where I'm like, okay, I find myself thinking about it during the day and I go back to it. But also the thing that you said, Josh, like I always have like a multiplayer game. For the last 6 years it was Rocket League, and then it got replaced by Knockout City, and at the minute it's Windjammers 2 because the beta's out for it. So it's like I think that people have those little slots and you sort of just like dip between them, but it depends. If something's like a big enough deal, then it'll dominate everything else. Otherwise I'm the big dipper. I'm dipping left, right and center. Give me as many games as possible.
When it's big season, like I won't put off a new release for like a platinum. Let's just say, like, imagine if something comes straight out after like Far Cry 6, can't remember the schedule, then I'll finish Far Cry 6, move on, do that, and then come sort of rally back like it did with Death Stranding like the other year.
Obviously, I would have done a few hours of the new thing and then got back to the one I was going to finish and then slowly get through both of them.
I need to finish some games sometimes, or I just get a bit like, and want to not go back to them like we did with Outriders, and we took like, it felt like 7 years off that game and went back to it and finally got it sort of.
So what you did with Outriders is like what Josh did with Days Gone, where you're just like, you have to get through it. I don't have to get through it. I'll delete it. I've deleted Returnal. Like, F that game. I'm done. I don't care anymore. Like, it's not, the game sucks. Like, I'm sick of batting my face against it. And I have to move on from it. But yeah, I think that over time, especially with things like Game Pass, just being like, here's 50 games that you might want to get through. Everyone has to try and find ways to juggle them and stuff. Next question from Bobby Boberson. Why do you think my parents are always fighting? I'm going to have to assume that it's because they're not subscribed to the podcast. Next question from Siobhan Robinson. If you could have 3 video game characters at your dinner party / to hang out with for the evening, who are you inviting and why?
Don't meet your heroes. Don't meet your heroes. Just don't do it. I want none. I don't want to disappoint any of them with how I am in real life. That's exactly
what they're like in real life. What if they've got absolutely no banter whatsoever?
Well, that's also it. I don't want to be a disappointment, and I also don't want them to be disappointing. So the answer is I want to just appreciate them through the screen and not get to know them at all. The same with celebrities, the same with musicians, because it'll only disappoint us all.
I'll tell a weird story. I once met a semi-famous guitarist. I'm not going to name him, but I went up to him backstage. I was covering something at the event at the time, and I went up to him, and I walked up to him from the side, and I just sort of said, "Oh, hey man, I'll let you know I'm a massive fan, followed you for years." And do you know what he did? He farted. He farted on the spot, and then he walked away. And I just I stood there, and he turned back around as he walked away, and he went, "Oh, yeah, big one that." And I went, "Yep, big fan." And that was it. And I was, so never meet your heroes, especially if they're mildly famous guitarists, because they might just fart and walk away. But it's
the saddest story I've ever heard in my life.
It broke me, and then I had to watch him do the gig, and I was like, I don't really care anymore. You farted near me like that Monty Python thing. It's a bad time. But in regards to 3 video game characters to hang out with, Benro, do you have 3, or should we nominate 1 each and see what chemistry comes of that?
I'm gonna say for mine, I'm gonna choose Kane, I'm gonna choose Lynch, and I'm gonna choose Nolan North from Spec Ops: The Line at the very end of the game.
Captain Walker coming in, being absolutely broken. I'll throw Dante into the mix. There's only meant to be 3, but I think Dante would bring the banter. I think he would spice it up a little bit.
Meet the bad people.
Yeah. Next question from Roy Mutombo Turner, who says, if you could have one feature from older consoles return to current gen, what would it be? For me, as silly as it sounds, it would be the little dancing save logos from the PlayStation 2. It was always interesting to see what what games would look like when you got a new game. I'm going to say just themes. Why are there not more themes? Like, remember when we had Xbox was like the different card themes, and I know that like the Xbox Series X has the power to animate a background or whatever, but it's nothing. And then on the PS5, it's just whatever game you're hovering on becomes the theme, but I can't set a system theme. I want themes.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, because I had a really sick Heavy Rain theme on the PS3, and it was just like nice to look at that rain.
Or just set a screenshot as a background or something.
Like PS4, I forget I had the Last of Us one, sort of like the interactive sort of the flames will go, and then after the time of day it would turn to the dark one. So it was like I never saw the light one because I never awake in the early part of the day. But trying to think of anything that I want back, like I don't.
Those save icons were cool too. I remember doing that, like going on the PS2's, like loading it without a disc so you could look at the memory card.
They were cool, but there's things like the internet now, so I wouldn't spend like an hour looking at them, or like what can I do with the PS1 or PS2 when I just turn on and listen to the waves sort of whisk me. I think, you know what, I want the Nintendo store to have the lovely music again. I
would take that. Yeah, the eShop still feels like a really primitive browser. Like it's still just so half baked at the minute.
It's better. Then again, it's better than what the PlayStation store at this point when you search something and then it gets maybe later.
Something went wrong. It's like, cheers, sorry. Josh, were you going to dive in there?
I was going to. Me and you, Scott, I'm not sure where you fall on this, Ben Roy, but we disagree about the opening titles of movies and TV shows. If I watch a TV show, I will watch the opening title of it, whatever it is, whether it's Game of Thrones, whether it's, I don't know, any other show that has a title. Friends, I will watch
every single episode. You'll never skip the title sequence.
Every time. And I appreciate that a lot of people don't want to do that. So I like that Netflix has the skip button. However, I don't like that we don't have proper boot ups anymore for our consoles because they're so fast. And that's awesome in a way. But we don't have, like Benroy was saying, the waves of the PlayStation 2, you know, literally taking you into gaming land and seeing the big towers and all that stuff, or even the opening stinger of the original PlayStation. They were lengthy, but I like them as a kind of settling in zone. And even though I quite like the musical stingers on the PlayStation 4, for instance, on the PlayStation 5, it's not quite the same. I need something a bit more authored, a little bit, that I want to watch every time.
Benroy, you need to answer. Do you skip every credit sequence all the time? Because when Josh told me this for TV shows, I melted internally.
No, because I need to know the Cylons have a plan. I need them to tell me every episode that there's 12 of them and then we still don't know who these are. And I like the little music that goes with it. And then they show me a little bit of the episode. And then they show me the intro sequence of all the names. And then they spoil a bit of the episode. I need that every time.
The only one that I leave on is Better Call Saul because that little guitar riff is really cool.
I mean, and that little when you get the little jigging fella, yes, I'm ready for it. But with the consoles, like, I mean, I can never hear it anyway because I'm normally turning it on when the TV's off, or it defaults straight to headphones anyway, so I never hear it on the PlayStation side. But I want Phil to hear this, and a quick resume. It's a great thing for Xbox, right? But for the Xbox games, a lot of them are tied to services, right? So if I turn Gears 5 on after turn the thing off, it's like, oh, I can't read the service. You've got to reboot the thing anyway. And look at those damn logos every time. And
if there's no button on the menu to just let you reconnect.
I know this is Coalition. I don't care anymore. I don't want to see the thing spin around in the ice 500 times.
I will totally say, I think that's completely valid because that's one thing that never gets talked about, that when you resume a game, even on PlayStation as well, unless they've coded a reconnect button, and then the game just goes, well, I've lost the connection, and you have to reboot it anyway. I had to do that with Doom Eternal every time.
Yeah.
So annoying. But just to bring it back to what Josh said about like looking forward to, I agree that the PS1's opening animation was incredible. Even the PS2's was really
and Xbox as well. Xbox was like
like super memorable.
Yes. And GameCube.
We're in a time with like SSD and instant loading, and I literally, when the PlayStation 5 shows me that PlayStation Studios logo, I'm like, I don't need to see this. You don't need to show me this. Like, it's nice. It's nice. They put it on the trailers. Like, I'm there to play a game. I don't need. You've advertised a system with zero loading and then designed a studio logo.
I bet you hate start screens, don't you? I bet you hate a start screen where the character's like sort of sitting there brooding, waiting for you to
I don't mind that because I can hit a button and do something. But if I'm just like, if the whole generational push is for less loading, why do we then have a more played out animation? Like, that's kind of crazy,
man. I think that's all it is. Yeah, we can skip them, but it's sometimes, not to go on about this too much, but sometimes I think it's a nice tone setter, like it's a nice little thing to get you in the mood or get you hyped. Like, I love getting a new PlayStation exclusive and now seeing that PlayStation Studios logo pop up and seeing
it's a nice logo.
The logos,
I've not seen it yet.
All arrive. And yeah, you might not want to see that every single time, but I think it's a nice way to, just kind of set a tone, ease you in to what's about to happen.
What's
I don't
like
need everything to be immediate all the time. That's all I'm saying.
I absolutely do. If I'm juggling 10 games at once, mate, I want them loading up as soon as possible. I'm not watching 10 animations. It reminds you, like when you first turn the PS5 on, it shows you that different boot up sequence that you never get again. Unless you like reset the entire system, you can never get that again. I like the idea of maybe doing that. When you start an exclusive, you get a cool animation, and then it's just like, right, lads, you're here to play a game, so we're going to get you in from then on in. Next question from Gentleman, who says, hey guys, I listen to your podcast every day, and even repeat most of them when there isn't a new one. Best podcast by far. Well, thank you very much. My question is, if you had to play one franchise of games and nothing else, what would you choose? For me, it would be The Last of Us. That sounds like a depressing way to go if you're living in The Last of Us.
The two games.
Yeah, for the rest of your days. I mean,
God,
go for it.
Though. I could do it.
Yeah.
I probably could. I've replayed The Last of Us 1 about 5 or 6 times. Like, which might not sound like a lot, but for me is a lot. Oh, it's a good question, this. Better idea than anything. Yeah. I need to have a think.
I could be tactical here, but it's either for me, it's going to be Resident Evil or Gears, but it would probably end up being like Resident Evil because all in all, I enjoy those games more. But if I would choose Gears, I'd have things like Horde mode and stuff. But then I don't know, for me, I'm being a bit tactical here. I love The Last of Us. Like The Last of Us 1's my favorite game ever, right? But if you got a franchise for the rest of the time, there's 2 games, and then you might not have another one for another 80 years. So for me, Resident Evil.
I think for me, I'm thinking of stuff that I could literally play over and over again, or play for like hundreds and hundreds of hours. So I think for an entire franchise, it would maybe be all of the Zeldas, because I was mainly thinking Breath of the Wild because of how experimental it is. But then I was thinking, well, like obviously you have all the old school Zeldas, but at least you have a series of fantastical games with gorgeous pieces of music, gorgeous worlds to explore, the variety like across that series in regards to the art styles. And then you have Breath of the Wild, which is this massive experimental like take that blows everything back up. And I don't know, for me, playing Breath of the Wild kind of makes you want to go back to those more like strict Zeldas, but then that also makes that when you do that, it makes you want to check out Breath of the Wild. So maybe that's a way that I could stave off insanity. I'd have to have something that was a long form series, I think.
That's a good shout, I think. If I had played more than 2 Zeldas, I think I would steal that exact choice. I'd go Fallout, because I like the idea of getting the isometric Fallouts combined with the Bethesda Fallouts, and then obviously the Obsidian Fallouts. If it was just New Vegas on its own,
76.
That would probably do me. And you could play a 76, which never ends and will be constantly updated with content. Thank you, Ben Roy, for cementing this argument as just the best one of all of us, because that's the game that
take the
keeps on
Avengers.
giving.
I mean, I've got Resident Evil 6, and that's like 30 hours to just finish one playthrough. So, there you go.
That's true.
It's a hell of a thing. Next question from Jared Liebergen, who says, what's more likely, Ben Roy finally realizing that Sekiro is an amazing game, or Josh finally playing Ori? Now, I have a feeling, I think that Josh finally touched Ori the other night, only for a few seconds.
Oh.
So I
had a few seconds of foreplay with Ori the other night. I turned it on, and I had a lovely 5 minutes with it. I watched the opening introduction, a surprisingly emotional introduction, and I did a few jumps and then turned it off because I wanted to finish Code Veronica before I started it properly. So I technically have already accomplished this.
So Ben Roy never needs to admit that Sekiro is an amazing game, even though he knows it.
I feel like it started a plague with the big men with sticks are just an annoying enemy for no reason. And I've seen it pop up in more games now, and I hate it.
There's a whole stance dedicated to it in Ghost of Tsushima, the anti-stick stance. It was
If I had seen this question before we started recording, or the other day, I wouldn't have played Ori, because I would have held out for Ben Roy to admit it first.
And you didn't know you were getting a Series X until you happened to catch one.
The Series X was just a surprise,
Catch one in the wild.
I mean, I beat them, but all of these games we just mentioned, so let's move on. I don't need to talk about them ever again.
Okay, next question from Willie Orea, who says, hope you guys are doing great. If you could change one thing about your favorite game/franchise, what would it be and why? Currently, I'm playing new Pokemon Snap and having a blast. And then he sent us a screenshot. Keep the content train on track. Is there anything that you like from your favorite franchise where you go like, oh, I wish this was tightened up a bit? It's
Mass
a toughie.
Effect 3, the conversation system in Mass Effect 3, and the way you have agency in that game. We talked about it when we did our podcast on it, but the difference in your Shepard between Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2, and then Mass Effect 3 is just night and day. In Mass Effect 3, your Shepard is practically an authored character that BioWare has written that you kind of get some say into it, as opposed to the way that's handled in the first 2 games, where it's very much whoever you want it to be, and you have more control over what you want to ask, how you want to answer. The sheer act of removing a neutral response in 3, I think, is indicative of how they approached it, because otherwise you're on a path. You're on either a good path or you're on a renegade path. And that's all you have to flex your characterization skills. Whereas in the other 2 games, even though it was obviously still limited in a lot of ways, it felt much bigger, it felt much more expansive. And I just wish that system was in 3 more. Like, I love Mass Effect. It is probably my favorite franchise, but I wouldn't play it over and over again if it was all I had to play. I just feel like that should have, I wish that was there.
Well, when we went through the Legendary Edition and we did like a series of podcasts and stuff, like getting to 3 and realizing / remembering how much they box you in was the thing that made me go like, I actually hate this, and like I hate how much they've they've siphoned you into these specific lanes, and that's the reason that I still haven't finished Mass Effect 3 in the Legendary Edition. For as much as I adore 1 and 2, like I just got to 3 and it was just that thing of like realizing that, all your dialogue options, like you said, are mostly binary. It's either super positive or super negative, and that stuff just makes it feel so regimented compared to the first 2. Ben Roy, any thoughts or games to suggest?
I would either add a decent crouch mechanic to, like, say, the first 3 Metal Gears where you don't have to crouch and then you go forward and you lie down. It's a bit cumbersome. That always got me, especially towards the end with some of those games. Or like, say, I would add a mode to the Gears games where it wasn't sort of like more enemies weren't as spongy. It's more like a couple bullets, they're dead, a couple bullets, you're dead, sort of thing. Sort of like more like, I'm not going to put 30 bullets into a locus and they're still going to be staggering. I want to put, like, say 3 or 4 and then it's down.
I really like tactical Gears game. That'd be kind of cool. Like nailing headshots and different limb damage and stuff to like get through hordes.
I love it when you do like harder difficulties in games, and then not only for you do you die quicker, but like also the enemy. Like in Spec Ops: The Line, I feel like when you're doing a harder, like it's you or them. Like if they get a shot on you, you're gone. If you get a shot on them in the right spot, you're gone. So I like that sort of like ante up in the ante.
Yeah, that sounds cool. For me, I'll just throw in the Yakuza Judgment stuff. I mentioned this on last week's UBP with Jules, but I think that as much as I adore that franchise, like sometimes when the story really kicks in, you just want the next thing. And a lot of those games, they have such massive open worlds, or they have such detailed open worlds that are packed with mini games and things like that, that when you get to the main story, it's like, okay, the next plot beat is on the other side of the city, so just run all the way there, talk to a character, right, now run all the way back and talk to someone else. And it's sometimes that stuff can get bogged down. And I think that sometimes they can give you one too many fetch quests in very sort of like JRPG or MMO style, where the narrative is so good or the character development is so good that you just want to crack on with it. And I think sometimes it can get in its own way. Like in the final third of Judgment, for example, it's just like everything is kicking off, but you're still like sprinting across the entire city just to get the next cutscene. That stuff can be a bit annoying. Next question from Jack Griffiths, who says, with the last 18 months being pretty crappy, has there been any games that you've played that became a hidden gem for you? Not necessarily a new game, but something that helped you get through the last few months. Old school stuff, I assume, because we've all been like, with the lapse of new releases, all three of us have just dove back into our back catalogs. Like Ben Roy's been on Alice the Madness Returns, or at least he bought it anyway. And I've been on Knights of the Old Republic. We played through the old Splinter Cells. I've played a bit of Fantavision because I got PlayStation Now. Played Blood Rain. It's but in terms of a hidden gem thing, not necessarily too hidden, but I guess I would shout out Spiritfarer. That was the first thing that I really spent time on last year, where it was just a solid 2 months of just living on that game. Did absolutely everything in it. Absolutely love it. Beautiful, beautiful game. Like the whole core message about trying to make sure that you can help people as much as you, especially elderly people, as much as you can before they pass away or move on. I think is a hell of a message. And that game ruined me by the end of it. But it's a gorgeous game, and I would totally recommend that. It is like a farming sim kind of semi-platformer thing, but I think the actual core of how it brings everything together is really, really cool. And I don't feel like Spiritfarer got talked about that much towards the end of last year. So that would be mine.
It's difficult, man, because like you said, we've played through so many older games and so many kind of underrated games, I suppose. Like I could shout out something like Mundawn, which I really liked, or The Forgotten City, which I'm playing now, but a lot of them were quite short, so I would definitely recommend them. But something that I kind of like sunk my teeth into over this past year that I didn't expect to, I guess, would be The Sinking City, which is that Lovecraft detective game.
Is that not The Forgotten City, mate?
Not The Forgotten City, mate. It's The Sinking City.
Right.
The Sinking City. That's the one. If I say it enough times, it might be able to just be etched into your brain. Which is like this weird Lovecraft by way of Sherlock Holmes detective game that is incredibly ropey, that still has some bugs, that is definitely like a double A game, but it just kind of like got its hooks into me in a way. And I really liked the daft characters. I really liked the imagination of the world. And that was like an open world title where I was putting 20 hours in. I just thought, this is not the best game in the world, but it's engaging enough for me to not want to put it down. And I think often you kind of like need those titles to freshen you up a little bit from the onslaught of AAA blockbusters.
Especially when like lockdown started with like really hefty games like Last of Us 2. It was like, I kind of need something a little bit less. Ben, what comes to mind?
Well, I've only really been playing hefty games. I'm looking at a list
hefty
here.
Old games though. Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yeah, I've not touched Metal Gear Solid 4 yet. That's in the chain. But I mean, I went through all the Metal Gears. I've almost done all the first three. Sorry, I've almost done all the first three Splinters. I'm realizing how phenomenal Chaos Theory is again. Like, in my mind, it was just the same as like 1 and Pandora Tomorrow, but it really isn't. Like it's just like leagues above it, and just Fisher cracking wires like got ya, and then like having fun with the every lad he grabs, like, you're gonna tell me something, I'm gonna knock you out. Do you know when you by the way, when you hit the floor, you don't just go black, you feel it. and stuff like that, and just really sort of like all these sandfish.
You need a Ben Roy voice pack for Chaos Theory, I think.
Yeah, all right, mate, you got any greens? But it's just having sandfish just cracking wise in that one is was really sort of a weird joy. And then enough the cuff one, like I found Wildlands strangely music relaxing, just putting a podcast on, not listening to that game at all, and just going around Bolivia and just doing Tom Clancy stuff. Living the soul of Tom Clancy recently, I'm going to say. So that.
Actually, I'll totally, as a because one other thing that absolutely dominated like in my playtime for a long time, I think I put over 80 odd hours into it, is Immortals Phoenix Rising, which I feel like just no one wanted to play, no one cared about.
Immortals Phoenix Rising.
If they could have attached the brand, they would have done. But that was literally just Ubisoft looking at the competition and just hybridizing everything that worked. And it's very much a Breath of the Wild clone, but it plays really well. The combat's awesome, and it's just really Moorish. It's really addictive. There's always something else either within your eyesight to go and do another puzzle, another enemy, something like that, or just you ping up the map and there's a bunch of little question marks and stuff that it's so easy to just lose hours and hours and hours into that game. I think it's the best thing Ubisoft have made in a long time. I just think it's weirdly very focused. It's quite a small map, and I feel like they actually like all those weird lessons that they keep trying to apply to Assassin's Creed and Ghost Recon and all these big bloated games. They reduce that down, and there is a really good treadmill there, really good set of gameplay loops that if they just make smaller games, they become really enjoyable way more consistently.
I kind of have one now, and I'm jumping back in. The Forest. I played The Forest last year with a friend, and that was just that wasn't what I was expecting. It was a fun, scary experience, and it's got things like if you get a bit bored of the scary things, I'm not gonna say where they are on the island, you can make your buildings invincible and just keep playing the game and stuff like that. And then there's so much to discover on the ground. It feels like The Descent at one point. It feels like all these weird cannibal films. There's an ending as well that happens, and a lot of things happen in that game, and it's well worth experiencing with friends or on your own, and you can put on happy peace mode and just build if you want as well.
Sounds good. I remember when you discovered that, we all like weird. It's like it feels like another Lifetime stuff that we played like at the beginning of the last 18 months. But lots of worthwhile stuff. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below. I guess in regards to what games have got you through the last 18 months. Because this has been the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. I've been your host, Scott Tilford, joined by Ben Roy Turner.
Happy birthday, Kane Lynch 2.
And
Can't
Josh
believe
Brown.
you're so old.
Happy birthday,
11 years old.
11 whole years of nothing but love. But we'll catch you next time.
Almost old enough to drink. Bye.
Bye.
Kane Lynch 3?
No.